I saw it somewhere. So it was an abandoned roller coaster. Ah, I don't know if I saw it. So my idea today is something maybe similar to roller coaster or tube pipe based. I'm gonna be, I don't know how I got this working before. Yeah, so if you just do polygon hamster track, you just do divisions with the primitive type as polygon, then you start to build these internal lattice structure, whatever, like a 3D lattice. I might start with that. Trying to build like an interesting 3D labyrinth or something connected with it. You found the roller coaster? Let's take a look. Ah, yeah. This is like the Houdini spiral. It's ready to go for a for a splash screen. But yeah, I think this is really cool. You can it's a really good way to start if you're like just getting into procedural modeling and stuff inside of Houdini. Trying to build a roller coaster like that, because it's all like just based off of a curve. So even if you just do the path deform, this is like a good starting point or whatever, but you are just starting to lay out like based off of a curve, and then you build your piece, individual pieces or whatever, and you can kind of keep like repeating them, so it's just one modular like track or whatever. You tried the Pyro Sparse? I never tried the Sparse Pyro too much, and especially not with clustering or anything too advanced. There's the Axiom fluid solver that I was thinking about maybe doing a stream on somewhat in the near future, just a day or two, because that's a sparse Pyro solver, but it will run on the GPU. So right now the Pyro solver, the sparse Pyro that's built into Houdini, it only runs on the CPU. It doesn't support the GPU. So that's why I was thinking kind of to do that. So yeah, and then I think if you just set this to fraction of curve length. So have you made like roller coaster track pieces or whatever? I haven't done a great job here of building something interesting, but you can start to build like get your pieces to go around a circuit or something like that. Yeah, I just tried Axiom really briefly, but I might look into it a little bit more to if I was to do a stream on it. And it seems pretty powerful for sure. Have you seen Junichiro's Horikawa's artwork? Yeah, he's really knowledgeable with all that stuff. He was doing Grasshopper streams or recording or tutorials as well, I believe. It was like for Rhinoceros, it's just like an architecture tool. There's a node-based plugin called Grasshopper that's somewhat similar to like SOPs. But yeah, he has really good approaches for procedural modeling. He's a really good source. All right. So taking this box, building the internal stuff, you get these individual lines, just like a box filled with lines or whatever your lattice resolution is set to. It's similar to the way that I built this like logo thing or whatever. Basically I was just doing a bunch of like find shortest paths, I believe, somewhere. And this will connect lines at different resolutions, or like it will just find the nearby lines based off of what you've put in your group and how you've laid out your point order and stuff like that. So we can do the same thing here. If you you just do group to begin with. This would be like the starting point. Just leave the name as group 1 and make it a point group, and base group just do 0. If I zoom in here, you can see it's found point number 0, or just the first point is the lower left hand corner. And then you can just do find shortest path. How did your experiments go with Axiom, Mr. Nightwing? Or Mrs. Nightwing? Or NB Nightwing? I've seen some people posting results like explosions and stuff on Twitter or Vimeo. Some cool simulations people have done with it already. And then I think right here with output paths, just set this from each start to each end. So then my start points will be what's in group 1, and endpoints just do exclamation mark group 1. So that's basically saying anything that isn't in group 1. So the exclamation mark is like excluding everything, excluding point number 0, or just whatever is in group 1. So this is nice. It's a bit boring, but this is working. We can do a sort. And then if we just randomize, you get different kind of connectivities and stuff like that. I think if I increase the resolution, then you can start to see we're getting a pretty wild labyrinth or maze or something like that. Your classic Microsoft Windows pipes screensaver. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The other thing I was doing was like right here, spatially, locally, you can see that there's some kind of like, there's still some pattern to it. It's not pure chaos or randomness or whatever. So that's a cool one to do as well. It's like, I'm not exactly sure. You could look up under the node what this is doing, but I think it's kind of like based off of the winding order, or the connectivity kind of the geometry. And then another thing that you can do, group by range. So if I do maybe 5 out of every 6, maybe invert. These ones might be overlapping, and maybe do from any start to each end in this case. But this one you can see I'm getting more like individual connected islands. So group by range, you could do 1 out of every 2 points, or like 1 out of every 8 points. So every 8th point would be in the group, and it would be a start point. So instead of just a single start point propagating everywhere, 1 out of every 2 or 1 out of every 4 or 5 or whatever, you get some interesting, somewhat repetitive patterns or stuff like that. So it's a bit like weaving or sewing or something like that, where you get interesting kind of lines looping and circling back and stuff like that. I think all this stuff right now is looking a little boring. Just, I don't know. This having everything be 90-degree angles is a bit uninteresting or whatever. So I might just do another box. And the one thing, before I move forward, one thing that's pretty cool as well is if you use the carve node, you can use this just to procedurally like grow or extract segments of the curves or stuff like that. Can make really cool motion graphics, animations, and mazes and stuff like that. Ooh. All right. So this box right here, polygon divisions, it's always just going to be lattice with 90-degree angles. Mr. Alex, how's it going? Yes, I'm doing something with kind of a lattice structure, or basically kind of like circuits or pipes or something like that, filling a box using this find shortest paths. I'm moving over and I'm going to try out a slightly different way of building it. So I'm doing points from volume. This one, you see it's still filling with a regular repeating pattern or whatever. I can do, what is it? For Voronoi fracture, I usually do a tetrahedralize. And then with this one, see it's already building kind of a 3D thing. You get some, it's always doing, this is a cool zone. So now we have some kind of like 90-degree angles or stuff like that. You can control the density here with it. By density, I just mean like the resolution or the amount of curves and everything like that. Get an explosion. That's pretty cool. Instead of keeping it like this, I'm just gonna do connected polylines, and then I can do the Voronoi split. The other thing you can do with this point configuration, you go to tetrahedral. And the tetrahedral arrangement is kind of like this hexagon structure or whatever. Basically, every other row is offset by half or whatever. So you get more of like a crystal kind of lattice instead of just repeating boxes or whatever. So I think with this, yeah, so now it's a bit more interesting way of creating some curves or something like that. First U and second U mean in the carve node. I thought U was one dimension. U is one dimension. It's basically, you're thinking of it, you should think of it like extracting. It's kind of like start and end of U. So they're picking two coordinates on the one-dimensional U coordinate system. So you just think about it like each curve has the 0 to 1 intrinsic or primitive, I don't know what you want to call it exactly, just like parameterization, just coordinate scheme or whatever. So if I just go back to the box, I think you can do it just with a regular box without even doing anything. Yeah, so if we keep these very close together, it's only extracting the midpoint segment or section or whatever of all the curves. And as I begin to like increase it It's just going forwards and backwards in both directions. I just usually do it through trial and error like that. I don't know if I need all of these. It looks like fuse and path. This one's just rebuilding the curves, I believe. Missed 30 minutes. It's all right. We're just still kind of getting started here. In this scene, I haven't done too much. I've just been taking boxes and finding different ways to fill them with lines or build curves inside of them, essentially. So mainly using this find shortest path node. We were fooling around for a little bit at the start, so you didn't miss a ton. But yeah, so if we look at this polypath and I turn on the primitive numbers or the curved numbers, you could get a little bit of a better idea of like what's going on. It's hard to see the overlapping or whatever, but because the midpoints of them are different in different positions. But some of them are overlapping, and then this will just rebuild them to single line segments, essentially. So now everything shouldn't be overlapping as much. One thing you can do afterwards that's kind of interesting is resample. And then you can do this instead of keeping the edges straight. You go to either interpolating or subdivision. You can start to get some organic kind of stuff happening. This can be really cool as well if you just do it before you've consolidated the paths to single paths. But if I do it to everything, you can see that there's some interesting like branching, splitting and stuff. It's almost like a vein structures or something like that. Interesting combination of like organic and repeating grid structures or whatever. you can, of course, just, we take the box, make a volume. This should just be a cloud inside of it. Density. And scatter. This way you'll get irregular points. Might be too many points. Start with 100 maybe. But yeah, then you have a way to kind of make like a cheap kind of vein system or whatever. You can do some customizations to make it more organized or less overlapping or whatever as well. Oops. I meant to change the other parameter there. All right. So I'm just changing some of these parameters around, trying to get something that looks a little bit more interesting. When do you think we'll hear from Side Effects about Houdini 18.5? My guess might be around October. End of October, start of November, I think. Just based off of what they've done in the past with their kind of release schedule and stuff. It usually seems like you'll get some teasers. Like some... soon then. Yeah, I mean they're pretty fast-paced in terms of releasing like much more quickly than a lot of the other major 3D software companies. But yeah, there should be like there's some whispers going around about the GPU VDB support within that NVIDIA added with the Nano VDB stuff. So hopefully more stuff on gets moved onto the GPU for having it computed more quickly. Hopefully some USD Karma improvements. The only confirmed or somewhat confirmed stuff is like there's one interview or comment from Jeff Late saying that their sourcing for the Pyro stuff should be getting moved onto should be starting to support VDB, so that it should be quicker to source VDBs. Like that's why I was always doing particles before. Do you think the future is more GPU? I think it depends what you're doing, but the future is definitely real time. Like, I don't know, 5 years from now or something, we'll probably be working much more like a Unreal or Unity type of context, where like this is just, even like Blender is nearly there with Eevee, where they have a real-time viewport. But yeah, I would like to think maybe in like 5 years that what it would be like, where your flipbook is like your actual final render. And you can do all that. So just the way that GPUs are organized and set up and stuff is going to be much quicker than doing CPU and RAM and all that stuff. Sometimes I'll do this wireframe, just to do like a cheap. It's It's quicker to do than the polywire. It's just putting primitive tubes or whatever along the geometry, so it doesn't have to actually like worry about building a mesh and connectivity and all that stuff. If you look here, I move this to higher divisions. The end result here is a bit better, but in terms of like interactivity or whatever, this is pretty quick. I might be a bit slower. It might just be because I don't have a ton of as you start to work with more geometry, this polywire gets quite slow. All right, we have some nice branches happening. You can always combine this stuff, like composite. I don't know if I should save up for the RTX 3090 for a Threadripper. Shit is expensive and life is hard. Yeah, I think it depends a lot on like what other applications and things you're using. So you kind of have to balance it. Like if you were using Mantra or more doing a lot of flip simulations and stuff like that, you probably would want a more powerful CPU, because the meshing, the VDB meshing, and just like in general, like all this VEX wrangles and stuff will take full advantage of a CPU, but you're having a really good GPU doesn't help this at all. But if you're doing more like Unreal Engine or Unity or Redshift, Octane, that kind of stuff, just it's all about the RTX. I think with VEX, it would be a while if they could ever even move it to the GPU. They already have the OpenCL kind of wrangle. You need to spend a lot more time learning this syntax. That's a lot more specific. It's like not as forgiving in terms of making mistakes or like weird syntax errors in your code. So people don't use it as often. But I don't think it would be that early until that stuff could get moved to the GPU, and then the same with like fluid meshing. That's just a really heavy operation with like millions or hundreds of millions of particles. And sending all that information to a GPU is somewhat of a problem. So yeah, there's this combination now. Some grid point configuration and some tetrahedral point configuration. So then combining those two start to get to pretty interesting, somewhat organic, inorganic. It's like chemistry bonds or something. Any organic chemistry students in the chat. But yeah, just blending between the two, and if you want, you can always throw in the purely random as well, just to kind of throw things off a little bit. Just break the grid a little bit. Carbon nanotubes. Yeah, I've worked on some stuff like that a while back that was conformational analysis, I think was what it was called. Yeah, and all the bond angles, they were super somewhat lattice based grids or whatever that the those stuff are connected to. I think it's somewhat similar to having the tetrahedral point arrangement. Yeah, this thing that Jake made is super super cool. I think he's I don't know. I've seen the earlier versions of this. I don't know if he kept the same method, but I think he in setups that he had made before, he would just add attributes using this. Like you could add array attributes and then build all of the curves and stuff like that using purely Vex, and it's super useful. Really cool for especially for trees or roads or stuff like that where you're worried about the edge flow, edge loops and stuff like that if you're making textures and everything. Trees into proper geo. Yeah, this is definitely all of the stuff that Jake makes is really useful. If you look on Oddforce, I think he has some write-ups as well. Like he had some, I think he was publishing them to Medium a while back. It was just a real like deep dive into Voronoi patterns and stuff like that. So I might just get rid of the random one for now. This is pretty cool. Result right there. It's a total rip. Inspiration from extremely nice YouTube tutorial that I had that done. Ah, nice. Yeah, these are really cool. This is like very organic kind of coloring scheme of like blue and red blood vessels or something. Seems like the diagrams of people's veins and scans or whatever, it's this kind of color scheme. That's pretty nice. Uh-oh. Alright. Full form iridescent over the top. So you were using Fresnel, like edge-based, like this color is computed at render time. But yeah, I think it looks really cool. Yeah. All right. So I was layering in iridescent set to max. So I was just combining even more grids or whatever, just at different point separation values to see what happens. Liking the stream, find it hard to use Vex and learning it. Don't know how to use it when it comes to projects making stuff in Houdini. Yeah, thanks for checking in, Nightmare Cheese. I think it's just kind of breaking it up into smaller steps, if that makes sense. Like, as you complete more and more projects, just try to kind of take smaller tasks that you're not comfortable with in Vex and try to tackle them using Vex, or take that chance to like figure it out. So instead of doing like a full, I'm switching to 100% Vex, it's nice because everything in Houdini is kind of modular. So even like the color node, you want to try out, like you can do random from random, these different ones or whatever. If you see the little lock here, it's nice. You can always undo. You could do allow editing of contents, and you see that they already have some Vex or Wrangles or stuff like that. So if you really wanted to, you could just replicate it, kind of learn things that way. You would need to read through to figure out like a little bit of how the syntax and variables and stuff work. But that's a really good way to kind of just get your hands dirty or whatever and pull things apart. Super cool. All right. Let me see what's happening here. I like the symmetry from this camera angle right here. I don't know. I'm thinking about this third group that I've been adding in here, but it doesn't really seem to be helping too much. Alright, just leave that where it is. Currently working any cool project? So you don't mind talking about it? Yeah, there's some stuff I'm working on in terms of like a freelance project, but I think because of NDAs and stuff like that, I can't really say what. I don't know. The NDAs are pretty big, like blanket agreements or whatever you sign. So usually I just wait until after the stuff is finished and released to talk about it or whatever. So I think to keep things under wraps for right now. It's just commercial advertising, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know too recently. That was that interesting. I think that there was this like bubble popping stuff or whatever. This was one thing that I helped out on certain elements and stuff with it. It was like a group of like 3 or 4 Houdini people who were all doing different parts of it. And then there were some different compositions and camera angles for some of the other colors or skews or whatever. But that was yeah, so these are some of the different camera angles or whatever. Pantene commercial? Yeah, I think the one on I think someone linked to it somewhat recently on Vimeo, right? Nutrient Brands. This one? I think this is the same one, right? 456 119643. Yes, it's the same. Yeah, this, I think the process reel for this is really cool. Like just breaking down the kind of going from style frames, test animations to final, like being able to break that stuff down and edit it together and organize it and stuff like that is really cool. I It's hard for me to say. It could be like one or two really good generalists, like having a designer sense and using Houdini. There's a handful of people that are really good at that, like Simon Holmendel. I think he's at Panoply, but he's super talented in terms of like, he used to be at he used to be at Man vs. Machine, but he just has a really good eye for like lighting and composition and stuff, but then also building like HDAs or assets that can do everything. But my guess for this would be like maybe 10 people. Maybe you have like 2 or 3 kind of art directors, 4 people, maybe split between like texturing, doing like substance textures or animation previs and stuff like that, and then like 3, anywhere from 1 to 3 Houdini people. It's just hard to know without knowing like the timeline and all that for the projects. Sometimes, so yeah, you can even see here how many people worked on it. This looks like maybe, I don't know what the tasks are and stuff like that. But yeah, if you do enough investigation, private detective work, whatever you want to call it, you could even go to their the studio's website, their brand page or whatever. Sometimes, because the other function of these websites is to pitch themselves to clients. It doesn't look like they have it here, but some studios or some websites have little pages that shows you their entire team and what they do or whatever. I'm based in San Francisco, West Coast. New in the forum. Good to see you stopping by. Yeah, so we're in the same time zone. What? A few hundred miles apart, maybe. So yeah, I'm gonna try maybe playing around with this. It's kind of a weird balance I'm trying to hit here in terms of something somewhat organic, but also like has some symmetry, has some structure and stuff to it. Hope it's getting better there. Yeah, it's from what I've read, we're supposed to be getting some smoke over the weekend again. Like tomorrow morning maybe. It cleared up pretty well this week, but I think it just has a lot to do with like weather patterns and stuff like that. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's weird. I know that even the smoke from a while back made it like all the way across the country to like New York, or even maybe across the Atlantic, like into Europe in some places. But yeah, it's tough to see. All right. Some things I do sometimes is a for each primitive loop. If you use this with the wireframe node, then you actually get access to like each of these primitives, tubes or spheres. So they just use spheres to make the rounded corners. But then inside of this loop, if you do box and do oriented bounding box, maybe it doesn't work with this element. If I go to the whole shape. Should be working. What happened here? Oh no. Whoops, it's the wrong one. Sometimes you have to convert. Alright. Yeah, so then you can switch and just get kind of another interesting kind of, again, going from organic or whatever to like rigid structures or boxy shapes or whatever. It's cool. So yeah, I think it's getting too repetitive, like at a higher frequency or too many points. This stuff here is pretty cool. I think you can as well do VDB from particles. Keto mess up. Keto mess up relationships. How's it going? So yeah, we can do usually you just have to resample to make sure you have like more points making up these curves. And then you just do kind of meta surface for these curves. So this can be another cool way to build, connect these structures. Let's go to Polygon Soup. Can be cool. Smooth. Yeah, you have really good control with the operations. You can even do the VDB smooths as well, and just get a real smooth boy going. Do VDB smooth SDF. Yeah, so you get a nice like 3D printed type of look or whatever, with like the way that all the corners are kind of like rounded, or when you really push this voxel radius, it's like that kind of stuff. Decide between the primitive types. Yeah, I think that takes a ton of experience, just getting a feel for the advantages and disadvantages of ways that you're representing stuff or whatever. It's the same idea with rendering, like knowing whether to use particles or volumes, instancing, hard surface, textures, like kind of like your artist just figuring out the brushes you have and which one to use for what visual result or whatever. But yeah, I think this is really cool. It's kind of like deer antlers or something like that. Finding what it involves along the path. Yeah, and then just each one has their own little gotchas and like kind of tricks or stuff like that, so it takes some time. So I think those little bumps you've seen, I think that's just caused by this resample is not creating enough points. So like each of these will be rasterized using the VDB spheres. It actually looks like I have enough. Sometimes you want more. Like if you don't have enough, then you'll start to see these little beads or bubbles or whatever. But yeah, it looks like it's just being caused when you go at an angle. Because like VDBs or all the voxel-based stuff, if you go along a straight line, you can get a perfectly smooth shape really easily. But then as you go across like a 45-degree angle or something that's not aligned to the grid, then you get that chunks. The marching cubes. Yeah, I mean the smooth, these other operations and stuff, you can hide it, but it's just the nature of using, it's like the same thing with Photoshop, going rasterizing or vector based resolutions or whatever, you'll get, it's kind of like anti-aliasing or aliasing or whatever. Sometimes I've found doing another this Laplacian flow or Laplacian flow. Just doing one of those at the end can help. All right. Let's see what happens with less. Ooh, not enough. All right. Yeah, I think that's a little too weird. Just go super high resolution. Randomizing each point size. Yeah, it might be too irregular for what I'm trying to do here, but you definitely get some interesting results that way. Kind of getting that effect like with the smoothing operations, like around the corners and stuff. It's getting some interesting beading and stuff like that. But you can as well just to merge like multiple composite the VDB stuff, which is cool. Like if I just do carve, just use this to extract a small portion of these curves. And then I'm just gonna hold Alt and copy this stuff. So with these, I could just treat them as bigger. Kind of like dewdrops or something like that. Do VDB combine. Should be able to do union. So then you have some interesting, there's like little balloon, inflated balloons or something like that, or a hot dog. Hot dog plants, like the little, I forget what the name of them, like the dog tails or whatever they're called. Do you have any end result about reference you were trying to achieve? Not 100%. This kind of like lattice structure type of stuff is it's pretty common. People have done different kind of stuff with it. There's no specific shot for shot reference or anything like that that I'm following. But yeah, this is cool. You can even animate these like things flowing along the curves or whatever if I wanted to. So as you smooth it down more, then you just starts to blend it, and merge it together. Sometimes just switching the order of these like smooths and blurs and stuff. If I do it after the combine, you'll eliminate this bump or whatever a little bit more. I think my shake was too much for it to to handle for a second there. But yeah, doing this operation after you start to even blend stuff together even more. It might be time to start picking up the render, see what this stuff looks like. Trying to think about like composition or framing or stuff like that. Could do it just taking up the bottom rectangle or whatever, like diamond. Just go ahead and make a camera. I was thinking that this one, just like front on, was pretty cool. Seeing everything more like a labyrinth layout or something like that. I'm usually going to my camera's aperture. You just do 36, and then your focal length will be like an actual full frame camera lens, like a full frame mirrorless camera. These lens lengths will match up. Do like 85mm, then you know you're working with the same focal length as like a real camera, pretty much. Sometimes I've done animations. Usually the Friday Cool Zone stuff, I'm trying to wrap up. With the Einstein sculpture, I tried to add some simulation and animation, but usually I don't have enough time to render. Like it's within an hour or 2 hours or whatever. It's time constraints. Sometimes I'll go back and add animations and stuff. Use Painterly shading print and you're a millionaire. Is that the same thing with like X-ray shader? Just there's one Redshift tutorial I saw floating around a while back that it was like for oil painting or like impressionist painting styles. It was really cool. It was like little, I think he was like copying little grids onto this race car that was driving along. All right, just add the RS light and can get started, see what happens. Look at that. You can get some cool illustrative kind of results if you just do one single light like this, just some weird angles, kind of like pencil drawing or pencil shaded or whatever. Resource for Redshift learning. For rendering skin, I know Saul. He has a Patreon. He has some good skin rendering videos for Redshift. I'm not sure about hair or cloth. Sometimes hair, like photorealistic hair, can be tricky. Like the Houdini for hair system, it has like render time procedurals that generate a ton of hair at render time, but with the GPU renderer with Redshift, it's a bit harder to do that. Do a strobe light. This is like a American Horror Story intro or something. The title credits, like little cages of bones or something like that. Yeah, I forget his last name. It's Saul something. It's if you just search Saul Redshift, he should come up. Black on the cyc, a puddle of goo beside it. Yeah, the this stuff here could even be goo, like the stuff I was compositing in. There are lots of people using Mantra in production. It depends. Usually the bigger facilities that have been around a while, like Espinosa, yeah, that sounds right. Sony ImageWorks or ILM, those places usually have pipelines that have been around for a while, so they're probably relying on Mantra for some things, especially for effects. Like if you're making spells or energy effects or stuff like that, Mantra, it's really nice. It's really customizable for writing the shaders and stuff like that. Yeah, some smaller places will use Mantra as well because it's cheap. It's less cost. But yeah, it just depends. It depends on what they make. Like if you're a small studio that's doing a lot of automotive rendering or something like that, you might be doing V-Ray or Arnold. If you're doing more like abstract motion graphics, maybe Octane or Redshift. But yeah, there's no. Sometimes you can look it up if you do enough investigations into their breakdowns and stuff. You'll see them do like a tag of what render they used or whatever. You can learn a lot more than you think from just looking at breakdowns. Let's do this cyc. All right. Tons of different engines. Trend is often escaping. Yeah, I think it depends a lot on just like the supervisor or the stuff like that. Some people mix and mash a lot as well. Especially you with like the deep compositing and deep render layers. You can use different renders and composite the results together. All right, let's see. I think I forgot to turn the light on. There it is. It's kind of cool just doing it like silhouette or whatever. Missed the whole idea of 18 Solaris. Just the idea behind Solaris in general. So Karma is different. Karma is their kind of progression of Mantra, or it's the new render they're making, and then it's compliant with Solaris. So Solaris is like their branding or their implementation of the USD from Pixar, the Universal Scene Description, which is still kind of being adopted by other products. Like Redshift is working on their implementation. Someone's made an implementation of cycles for Solaris. So eventually, hopefully like lights, materials, and things like that will become more standardized. And just using like a drop down up here, you could select different render engines and switch between like Arnold or Redshift, and you wouldn't have to manage as many like material networks and stuff like that. There's other standards that are being developed, like Material X or OSL, Open Shading Language. So people are trying to start to use more kind of standards. Like you see it a little bit already with Alembic and PDB. You can share data between software packages and stuff more easily. This is the same idea with rendering and stuff like that. So your scene can be shared between software packages and rendered in other renders more easily. So like before, we were just relying on FBX, OBJ, Alembic, or weird exports like that. You wouldn't necessarily, like, all of the settings for the lights and things like that wouldn't come across as easily with a lot of FBX. Yeah, I think so. Those were really old standards, and none of them were meant to be complete like scene exchanges or whatever. But yeah, they're like 10, 15 years old maybe. So USD, like FBX for example, doesn't support instancing, or not that easily, but like USD should support instancing. It should support shaders, and it should be a lot. Just some time probably before everyone really adopts it. But definitely the future. It's the way to go. So USD isn't necessarily, I wouldn't call it like frame by frame. Like it's more of a skeleton or a mechanism for describing the entire scene. So it's not meant to really store geometry. Like within USD, you can link to an Alembic cache. Like the same way that a website is written in HTML, but it can link to a JPEG image or a video file. USD is a similar thing, and even the markup of it, like the syntax that they write the description in, it's very similar to HTML or CSS or JSON, those kinds of things. So it's basically just describing the structure, like the skeleton of your scene. Yeah, and then it can rely on Alembic. So like I could have an effects cache that would be like an ocean surface or a splash that I'm caching out as an Alembic, and then the lighting department would be sharing a USD file. I could update the link in that USD file or whatever, and then the next time the lighter opens the scene, he would see my newest cache. Some people have already tried to do that kind of stuff, just using like the file system. You can do symlinks or stuff like that, but having a open standard should be a lot better than like everyone relying on their own hacks and tools and pipelines and stuff to manage all this. What do we have here? Ah, this is the vehicle, right? I think I saw this. Yeah, the the last scene in this is a little weird, how the logo doesn't rotate or anything like that. That was the one thing that caught my eye, but overall the crumpling, all those effects and everything looks really cool. But yeah, this is the same idea as USD and all that stuff. Like eventually I would think Unreal and Unity would support USD, so just transitioning your effects or your simulations or whatever between software packages should become a lot easier. Less of a headache, less scripts, less tedious things to click. All right, I'm just gonna turn on the bounce lighting. I still need to make a shader for this sculpture. I have this empty container. Just see what these metals and stuff look like. I get more in 10 minutes here than days defuzzing obscure press communication. Yeah, it's a bit hard to know like how all the pieces go together and all that kind of stuff if you just read their press releases or whatever. I have found on Pixar's website they have some good, it's a lot of reading, but they have some good documentation just about the overall like philosophy or intention of USD. Vegan nuts. Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm still kind of messing around with it, but I've just been bashing the find shortest path with some points and geometry and stuff like that. I started to merge these VDBs to get these like bigger bulges. I've been thinking about just how to render and shade everything and light it right now. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna mess around with the light a little bit more. Everything's too dark still, I think. Could you make the same material you're using in Mantra if you don't have Redshift or Karma? You're never, in my thought process or my interpretation of it, you're never gonna have access to all the crazy features. Like with Mantra, you can do some wild stuff in the shaders and read like point clouds on disk and use them to influence how you shade or displace geometry. So you would never really be able to do really crazy stuff like that with Karma or like the USD workflow, but you would be able to just define and share like common hard surface shaders that's just like linking to a texture, maybe a procedural noise that's driving the specular roughness or something like that. Like that kind of stuff, you should be able to share it, which is the more important stuff to like have consistency. But it's not an overall thing where it will make every shader you make 100% like cross-platform. There's probably still some precautions or steps or stuff you would need to take. All right. Still see some of that aliasing or whatever. Inspected the USD SDK and Alembic, but both really felt meant for late stage than efficient interchange. I mean, I think there's some, because Pixar has already been using this stuff in their own process for a few movies, maybe already. Um, it's definitely somewhat for late stage rendering, but even if you think of like character animation, if someone's animating like a character running and then they want you to add cloth effects to it or something like that, yeah, I think USD should be pretty good for it. Like even Alembic is pretty good. You think of FBX? I'm usually more of a fan of Alembic over FBX, but depends what you're doing. For game engines, it seems like FBX is still used a lot more. FBX is horrible closed source versioning. Yeah, there's FBX has some weird bugs and stuff like that with it. I've noticed, or I don't know if it's just because it's old or it's. I think it's harder for people to develop for it because it's not as open. Like Alembic is fully open source, so everyone's implementation in terms of importer and exporter should be more expected or consistent. But with FBX, I've found it, at least the Houdini implementation of FBX is quite poor, I would say. All right, I don't know. I think maybe just adding some more detail to this. Maybe going in and see what we get here. Might be too slow to work with. It's already getting up to like 3 million points. You can always do the adaptivity on here, especially if you're using a GPU renderer. I think it would be a lot quicker then to work with that information. Maybe do this 45-degree rotation, which makes it look a little less boring. A bit more interesting. I've still seen FBX being used for like exchanging bones or rigs. I still see it being used quite a bit for Unreal or Unity. Like people will convert RBD simulations to bones, and then you can It's kind of like using packed primitives. Like a bone is the same idea as a packed primitive, where you have an intrinsic transform and everything. Yeah, Limbic is just baking point caches. You can do like rigging information, like it has the parenting hierarchy and stuff, but I don't know how well it does the like skin deforming on the fly or whatever that FBX might be able to do. I've seen people even do cloth simulations with FBX where they'll just have like bones spread across a grid that are doing deforming, like capturing or describing the cloth performance or whatever. Jib Wood, you liking this new angle? Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a little bit better. I don't know, it's still kind of organized, but it's just a little bit more interesting overall. The shadow is a little suspect, I think. I don't know if it needs to be softer. I think having a bigger light in general is going to help. Just have more reflections. Sniper Echo, how's it going? I'm just trying to make the background paper material or whatever that we're saying this studio is using, just make it look a little less distracting. A highlight is always it's always hard for me to figure out whether it should be like rough construction paper or more of like a plastic or something. It's going pretty good. It's Friday. We made it another week. That's something. All right. I might go back to my Friday. I might go back to my lower resolution shapes. Just get rid of this stuff for right now. It's just getting too busy. I think too many lines. Man, this VDB stuff is getting pretty slow. I'm just gonna go over, visualize it with this. Just connect the transform. This way we can just work much more quickly figuring this out. These are interesting. This could be like a power component or something. Engine. Lighting material. Yeah, I mean, if you get really good at just lighting and shading, you can kind of make anything, like even the default box, look pretty good. You can get push things a lot in rendering. Thank you, Nightmare Cheese. I appreciate it. More into abstract design. Yeah, I've been switching, like I was always doing a lot of effects, traditional effects, water, fire, dust. But over the last couple years, like since I did some freelance contracts with Apple in their marketing department or whatever, and I kind of found I liked just doing abstract kind of sculptures and motion animation and stuff, and it like combined pretty well with my current skill set, I think. I don't know, but just to keep moving in that direction, it was like a bit more interesting for me or whatever. You also kind of open up like employment possibilities if you're just doing effects like traditional pyrotechnics and stuff like that. They're gonna try to like fit you into a existing pipeline, but if you can create like a lot more abstract stuff, they'll recognize that they can fit you in like to more of a project, essentially, I would think. It's like even the Man vs. Machine commercials and stuff, some of that is just 100% like Houdini. Realistic sand dunes without success. I mean, they have the sand dunes shelf tool you can get started with, right? Under terrain dunes. But it depends, like with sand, depending on how close the camera is and everything, you might not even want to do like height fields at all. So I would say it depends a lot on the look and stuff you're going for. Worked on the Google Stadia. Google has had some pretty good branding and advertising and stuff like that over the last couple of years. What happened here? This smoothing slimmed every got the blobs going. Making a height map to be used in a game engine. I think the terrain tools should be pretty good. The height field terrain, like the dunes preset, I've tried it a little bit and it definitely isn't the greatest starting point, but you can do that. There's also I think Alessandro here, he had he kind of made a sand solver that was, I think it might have been similar to height fields, but it's like modeling erosion and stuff. Some of, I don't know if that's just like erosion. He was looking into some sand piling and stacking and stuff like that, but it was using height fields. Super technical. Yeah, I can add the link there. A height field is always going to be very interactive. Like you can paint and move things around pretty quickly, but then to get really realistic results, it always seems like a bit of a struggle with it. Veins. Yeah, I was trying it a little bit more bendy, more vascular. I think my smoothing, maybe I just need to turn down the smoothing. think I'm stuck right now with like, sometimes if you make your VDB really high resolution, then you just end up doing like a ton of smoothing iterations every time or whatever, and it just get kind of stuck. You can just turn that off. And work at a lower resolution. Makes more sense. It's like a car engine. Yeah, there was some stuff earlier that was looking more like a power cell or something like that. That was pretty cool. .3D printed jewelry generator. You can do some interesting stuff with the 3D printed results if you like cast it, paint it. You make some crazy stuff. Whoa. Yeah, I had a friend out here that had like a whole studio with the 3D printer and everything set up. Want to take a chance to play around with it. All right. I think I need to get back to I don't know, this stuff was feeling pretty good. Let's try this. I think this was a promising direction to be heading in. And then layering it with the other branch over here, I think is what the direction I want to head into. I don't know. I keep getting stuck between things that are too complex of a form. It's a hard balance of like high resolution, low resolution stuff. So I think with this chain over here, move this connection to connect right there, and then it will basically just use this resolution tied between the two of them. I think I'm going to go back to this rigid look. And here, just move this back to straight edges. Yeah, the readability versus complexity it's like that, and then as well just like simplicity. Like it's you're too far on one end of the spectrum and things just look too simple and uninteresting. And then you go too far on the other direction and things are like off-putting because nobody is just too busy of a form or whatever to look at. We're getting the sausages, getting the glizzies back out. Uninteresting, off-putting. All right. So my other plan here, my plan was we have the two kind of results that we're doing VDB combined to merge them. But I think if I do another VDB convert over here, color it. So just go to red. Start with white over here. And then transfer that attribute. We could kind of start to get a mask or a way to blend between the two of them. PDG. Yeah, I'm still doing some research. The PDG is really cool to do a bunch of different variations. But yeah, I want to cover some PDG stuff in the near future. Hard drive space. This stuff here is actually pretty light. I've been doing the adaptivity, but yeah, it can pyro caches is what makes the hard drive whoop. You end up with like 1 terabyte every frame. Especially with the default flip meshes. Yeah, that's another one. I don't know, I think they might have fixed it recently, but in the past their shelf tools would I think just the DOP import fields, like by default they would be bringing in all the I think they're still kind of doing it. They bring in density, velocity, rest, temperature, heat, fuel, color. If you're making all these fields, like usually I'm just doing density, but this can make, like basically multiply your file cache by 10 times the size or whatever. How do you go about with a macro slimy texture with air bubbles? For the fat bits. Yeah, where'd the space go? Yeah, I think you would want to do like a triplanar projection of like a macro slimy texture or procedural noises. You could make particles and scatter points or whatever. So right now I have this color that's on the mesh. So if I go to my Redshift material network, I should be able to get it. You just do the particle point attribute. Color. Just pump it into the main surface just to see if it works. Then I think if you do vector to scalars, then I could get like the other components, so you have something to blend between. Then usually I just make two shaders. So we have one that's the metal or the copper. Another one that could be plastic. The plastic. Sometimes you just have to reboot the renderer to get it to pick up the new shaders. Then if you do material blender, maybe this is the base will be the plastic and the layer 1 will be the copper. So it's a bit hard to see, but one of these, if I had this, what attribute are you using? Just the color attribute. So I'm using the Y, or the green component of the color value. If you look up here, the green channel, or this is the Y component, it's 1 in these areas. So this is getting a value of 1. So it's using the layer color. Yeah, usually you could use other attributes. I usually just use color, especially for these quicker streams, because it's like super simple to visualize and expected, I would say, somewhat. It's a bit unoptimized because you don't necessarily need to use a vector or like color information. I could just make it a float, like blend. Sometimes I'll just make an attribute called blend. But working quickly, I'll sometimes just put stuff into color. I don't know how these areas here that aren't inflated are getting a color. I'm gonna look at that. You could do maybe reshape erode. If you do enough of that, then you'll eliminate the little blobs. You got rid of that. Just doesn't make as much sense to have those other areas be colored. I left not much. Sorry, missing so many streams. It's alright, we all get busy here and there. Thank you for continuing the Twitch, the tier 1 for 4 months. Oh my god. So yeah, it's looking a little more organized, just like less complexity now. So if you wanted to get more into like slimy or something like that, done some stuff before with the Maxon noises. Really looks good, thank you. Yeah, it's not super polished yet, but it's starting to get somewhere. And do this. Give me the gear. Oh my god, I left not much. Thank you for all the gift subs. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 gift subs. I appreciate it. Rotate, pulsate, and change color. Yeah, that's one thing I was thinking about, because I'm producing all these with the carve node. I could slide the inflated bits or whatever along the shape, so that they're kind of moving or spreading, propagating out or whatever. There's definitely some cool possibilities and stuff like that with animation. Thanks for all the streams. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's nice to see all the people in here watching. There's somewhat growing. The YouTube channel and stuff like that is starting to get a good library of the VODs, the old streams as well. But it's cool to see all the participation from everyone. All the different ideas and advice. Questions. So there's some of these noises that look more like somewhat like a fluid. I'm looking for something with like little little darker areas like this. Just shrink it down. You start to have something that could be like little bubbles. Then if you want to flip, you just do change range. This is kind of like the levels tool in Photoshop. You just remap things. You have like a speckled, bit of a speckled paint or something like that. So this one, I think I could do something where this is like little air bubbles. You definitely want to do either a bump. I'm just going to start with a bump, but you might want to do displacement. So this white value will be like a height or a lift. Should be able to do it like that. Height field. So white is lifting it up above the surface. You usually just need to lower the scale depending on what your scene is set up at. It's already too high still. Would be like a prickly cactus, some kind of fruit or something like that. I think my color attribute dropped out. Again, you just need to reset the redshift shader to get it to pick it up. Sometimes when you disconnect stuff or reconnect stuff with the IPR or the preview running, it will forget to like load other attributes. Do you animate in Houdini? If you do you do it in object level? Like a lamp 5. It depends what I'm doing. Usually I do animations in SOPs because you can do the procedural, like Vex-based scripts to program your growth or like stuff like that. So I think like a couple of months ago I did the bullet trails going underwater, and I set all that animation up in SOPs because it was like easy to scatter lines, and then those would be the guides for bullet trails that shoot through the surface of a water. For the vehicle burnout stuff that I'm working on right now, I just do that at object level. It's a little bit more efficient. Like your noises will stick to any animations you do at object level. And then for pyro collisions and all that stuff, it will be more efficient to retrieve the animation from object level because it doesn't have to calculate every frame like deformations. It's just a rigid transform. So I think my material, I can make one more. Nothing is easy. Yeah, I would, in general, I would say like, unless you're really trying to get into rigging and doing a lot of stuff at object level inside of Houdini, like, or in general, I only use these parameters every once in a while to do like translations or rotations, but with SOPs you can do the much more complex animations, especially for growth or adding simulation and all that stuff is where Houdini really shines. So I don't know, I'd say in general like 90% of the people will do all of their animation in SOPs, and then there's some special edge cases that they'll animate stuff at object level like 10% of the time. No, it's okay. It's what I'm here for. fun to chat, see what you guys are interested in. So I think this bump, I was making another material here and then can do another blend color and transition to a third material. I'm just gonna make this red so it stands out for right now. Got our prickly pear fruit. But these are eventually going to be bubbles, for like air bubbles or something like that. Is there a good glossary where I can learn what all the stops stands for? I mean, general, I think it's all on the side effects website. The master glossary is like their documentation. Their servers might be slow or something. So if you just go to documentation, you can see right here for nodes, they have their, this is like a brief description of what the context is or what it stands for. Some people have written more concise explanations, like generally the first letter stands for the operation that the node is performing, and then op is always standing for operation. So chop is channel operation, rop is render operation, sop is surface operation, although they've started to call it geometry more recently. But in general, like task is a task operator. And then any of these that you click on, you'll get the full list of every single node for that context. It's a bit intimidating. You could slowly just use it for reference or whatever. So with this bubbles, I think I don't want it to get applied in the metal region. So I think I can do a multiply against this attribute value. So then I'm just applying it like a mask. Might be flipped around right now. Uh-oh, I see what happened. Forgot to connect them both. When you're using noise displacement in shop level, how do you make it stick with the geo if it's deformed or animated? Generally you need, I don't know which context you're talking about or what you're saying with shop level, but in general with 3D, all the materials work the same way. Any procedural noises you're generating is using object space coordinates, which means any transform you do up here, it will stick to it, but any deformations or animations you do inside, it doesn't pick up that animation. So if you want it to completely stick, then you need to switch maybe to UV vertex attribute that would be your rest coordinates or UV coordinates. Like then you need to start texturing it or providing it with coordinates somehow. So I think something's up here with my multiplication. One of these needs to be flipped around, I think. I'm just going to take a step back and look at the values. I think I messed up. Somehow this color isn't I think when I changed the distance of things, it didn't fully get transferred over. And then this one, I want to flip it around when I'm doing the multiplication, I think. This is where I wish you'd have like a little thumbnail, or it would get easier to preview some of this stuff. I think this isn't what I want to do. So this one, I want to flip it around here. So now we just have speckles. I'm just inverting. I think you can do color invert or invert. I don't know. I usually do it this way because you have to be careful. Sometimes they just call -1, like multiplying something by -1, inverting it. We should be in better shape now. So we can do this as the bump. And then this will also be the same way that I'm going to transition to the last or the third material. We have this being used for the blend. Let's take a look. I don't know where these other... This might just be an artifact from the mesh. I think it's that aliasing stuff I was talking about earlier. I think this... Let's try out a different... Some of the jade or milky coffee you can use because it's doing like subsurface scattering or reflectivity, so you can kind of use it to imply that it's like little bubbles. This area gets stretched out, so it just becomes easier for the light to enter it or whatever. Using this exponent or the power, you can just control kind of like a gamma or color correction. I don't know. Alex, have a good night. Sorry, this time is hard for people in the Eurozone, the other continents. Might just try some different materials here. The other cool zone. Tinted glass sometimes can give you some nice results. Take it easy. Thanks for stopping by. Would that apply subsurface scattering on the air bubbles? Tinted glass isn't using subsurface scattering, but the way that I have it set up right now is that this material 3 is only applying to places where there is air bubbles. So some stuff, I don't know which. Jade was a somewhat good example. It's working the way I thought it was. Go back here. Yeah. So yeah, it will just apply subsurface scattering wherever that shader or that mask is giving it a value of 1 for this blend color here. Might just be that this radius scale is too big. I think it's looking a little bit better. I think I went out of control with that remap. I might want to switch this to it's time for beer. Bubbly beer. Might be time to switch over to displacements instead of a bump. I think I'm pushing stuff too far right now. Trying to do subsurface with a bump map is kind of breaking it. Let me just see what's going on. I think somehow my air bubble mask or range or whatever is getting too big. Salve. It's time to save. Need to make a timer bot telling me to save the file. This is September 18th. All right, saved. Oh, it means hello. Sorry, it was a good reminder though. Hello to brothers. Bomb, what is afternoon? Bom dia is good morning, right? Good day. Obrigado. Stop that crash for making a home run with the guns. Ooh. Nice. I might go up a little bit higher in terms of VDB resolution here. Just to try to fix, there's like still some aliasing or like jagged edges. Oof. This stuff is linked. Might not want to do that. Sprinkly donut. Yes, maybe like a melon or something. Jackfruit. Some of the fruits have those texture, that kind of like pattern as well. Mas infectido. Despacito. So I think this one here, I want to go back to my lower resolution. Just to, I want to decouple these now so that they aren't linked. Because the masking and stuff like that is like getting super specific or pretty touchy. I think this is back to where I was before. I might go to my Redshift stuff, turn on these settings, so I can switch this over to actually doing a displacement. See what we get. Hopefully it doesn't crash. Oof, it's quicker than I thought it was going to be. Spiky boys. Whoa. Starting to get some bubbles. Got the herp. Yeah, maybe red isn't the best color to use. Yeah, I don't know, the jade, some of those other materials were pretty cool. It's been adjusting this masking region as well, like min-max of my noise remap to dial it in as well. Looks more like water. Air bubbles at that scale are random. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't necessarily physically. I was just kind of taking inspiration from it. I think my tessellation and stuff was like too low of a setting. Kind of abstract bubbles. This stuff makes it super slow, but should start to fix those issues. Windshield noise pattern. Yeah, I guess it could be like a condensation. I guess it's not super close to condensation, but it could be a good starting point for it. All right. Just gonna go lower with it. But yeah, I think like just doing glass, tinted glass or water could get maybe close to cold. Their internal sticks poking through. I'm not sure what you mean by making them cold. Frozen? Oh, gold. Yeah, that could be cool. Like, let's see what happens. I'm not sure with this one shader if it was going like the wrong way with my exponent. I think I wanted it to, whoa. I think I wanted it to be it's really slamming the contrast or whatever down. Yeah, I don't know. I was liking something about having 3 different materials. Just it kind of makes it a bit more complex, I think. Like I just wasn't sure which direction to head in with it. The dispersion. Oh dear. I think some of this stuff kind of breaks because you're like not properly nesting. Like once this ray penetrates and refracts inside, it doesn't necessarily know where to go. That's why I think sometimes doing this milky coffee can get better results sometimes, because this stuff in here, you can just make things like blurry. I think it gets pretty noisy sometimes, but this is more of like a volumetric effect almost. It's a bit more like slime goo. Smooth. This is back in the Baja Blast bubbles. Yeah, I don't know, maybe getting rid of the gold. I think this is a more interesting combination of colors, materials. GUI bits subsurface scattered. Have a duplicate to cast shadows. Like internally. Yeah, I think I'm not exactly sure with the shaders and stuff, like how to set it up. To get something that's like perfectly. You do null right here. Looks like a VR sculpt. You've been doing these lattice grid-based stuff. Sometimes I'll just do the out. It's gonna be my render. And I can also retrieve it. Object merge. And then this one, I think just do peak. Just to make the stuff a bit deflated. I could try this just without, you want it without the extra layer of goo. I want it to be close enough to catch shadows. Like, I don't know if it's, I'm just gonna try this first and see what happens. Lines and lumps, volume 1. Yeah, maybe I'll just try this and see if it, how much of an effect the shadows have. You think that's it inside? Fracture each lump, hit it with a hammer, have them crumble off. It'd be somewhat, not necessarily difficult, but slightly time consuming, I would say. But yeah, it should be pretty easy. You can do, I guess the hardest part would be like getting the transition to look seamless enough. Like the materials of it to not appear as like two separate different meshes or whatever. You might have to do like a Boolean instead of VDB combine. So this will just be internal. All right. Do another thumbnail. But yeah, I would think if you did like Boolean, maybe between this or maybe peek it out the other way, then you could separate the lumps and have a little bit of control. So yeah, I think it's working. I don't know what's changing on the outside of it. The goo, not this, the bubble kind of material does, but not necessarily the 3D lumps. Voronoi fract lumps lattice, then I'm lost. I think it would just be then going into the RBD territory. It's hard to know how experienced you are with the RBD stuff. But yeah, so you would Voronoi fracture the lumps, and then just through the constraint, the majority of area to spend time would be doing constraint network stuff. You can manage a lot of that stuff through attributes, but or even hand animate like constraint networks turning on and off. It should be easy to dissolve them or like release stuff from the constraints. It's hard. It's kind of hard to step through. Could do something with flip, like viscosity. That could be cool as well if this stuff just like slides off or whatever. Might try a slightly different camera. Forget that when you start to add the displacements, every time you move the camera around, it has to like completely rebuild the scene and do the displacements, so stuff starts to get pretty slow. The transparent look of the slime, yeah, I think it's pretty cool now. It's like a gel, or it feels a lot more slimy in general. Might need to add a material to this, right? Otherwise, I think that's why right now stuff looks like it's kind of getting brighter, because it's like the other material that's showing up inside of everything. Might have made my displacement settings too high. Whoa! Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of cool being white inside of it, though. It's like a mucus or something. Redshift got a little confused. I'm gonna lower the settings for the displacement tessellation. Should be quicker to render it with these less divisions. I guess you could always just turn it, deactivate it. Maybe it makes more sense to do that as you are moving the camera around. Yeah, I don't know, it was kind of symmetrical view is definitely working pretty well. Maybe just something like the corner of it. Funnel spiders. I think this, I don't know, somehow this thing got higher than the ground. Maybe because I did the VDB smoothing and everything. So you're liking the commands from? Trying to hack me? How's it going? It's pretty good. It's a hack. I was just talking about this, the coding hacking terminal. Making some goo-based shaders today. Nice angle. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. It's I think these lattice structures are always hard to frame up. Some growing structures. You were doing it based off of a simulation or just in Vex? It was L systems. You could do some stuff with L systems, some growing kind of stuff as well. Avatar. It's Avatar Alien Blue. Just node based. There's kind of countless ways to do the growth stuff in Houdini. It's pretty cool. There's like the reaction diffusion differential or whatever. Liking that color. Which one? How it is right now? I think this extinction scattering you have to be careful because it like adds brightness. So if you really jack it up super high, it just breaks things don't look as physically accurate or based because it's like emitting light almost. But yeah, I think this is pretty cool, seeing the shadows and stuff in some areas as well. What do you think about this LED? Maybe making it a shinier metal, less rough or blurry. How do you restrict VDB smoothing to only smooth the parts that are moving? Like if I have spheres moving and building a mesh. So the VDB, all the VDB operations support masks, which is pretty cool. I don't know, I might need some reflective cards or something like that. But yeah, all the VDB operations support masks, so it's pretty cool for that. I think I'm getting pretty close to winding things up, wrapping things up. But yeah, you just would want to separate it out. Yeah, with the mask. I could do a quick example. I think I might just kind of leave this where it is for today. But yeah, I can do a quick, just save this again. So all of this stuff, thank you, Vegan Nuts. It is a Bob Ross official creation. Noah XYZ, how's it going? Yeah, pretty much wrapping things up. I was just doing this find shortest path to make this structure, and then doing some VDB redshift fanciness or whatever to shade it in an interesting way. But yeah, if we have a grid, this is the same technique and stuff I'm doing pretty much. You just do find shortest path. So this is how I'm getting the kind of lattice curves. You could just do 0 for the start point, and then I think from any start to each end. Thank you, Seagull Rush. Yeah, so I was just sorting to get a random order, and then if I do carve, we should be able to animate the growth with it. You can kind of see that there's these like internal extra points. So that's because there's stacked up or overlapping curves. I think I was doing polypath to fix it. We've done this with Vex. It's a great node. Yes, I was doing a lot of more of this stuff in Vex before, but I found like easier ways to replicate it, kind of like shortcuts, I guess. You have a little less flexibility, but for working quickly, it can be nice. I think I was doing fuse. All right, maybe just connect endpoints. I don't know, I might need to use the Jake Rice special for what I'm trying to do. Maybe it was convert. You using a tutorial? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just gonna keep going how it is right here. So if you're doing a growth effect for this stuff, you can just do fit the frame from 1 to 48. Then remap that to 0 to 1. So now from frame 0 to 48, it will grow. And then if I want all of this stuff to be VDB, I just do resample. You can do resample by polygon edge to preserve the sharp corners. So then this will be VDB from particles. So now you have the growing VDB. Then if you want to selectively smooth just the ends that are growing, you just convert this to polygons. So if I make a copy of this carve, I can run it in a different method here that's set to extract. And then you can turn off start or first view, that's the start point. So now this is only pulling out the endpoints. And then doing another VDB from particles. This is just the endpoints. So all the smooth, all the smooth and VDB kind of shaping operations, they'll have this extra input. It's this VDB alpha mask. So if I plug it in like that, just do maybe Gaussian. You can see that the mask is only affecting smoothing the inside parts. If you want that to be flipped around, you can do Ooh, should be able to do invert. Maybe my smoothing is too high now. I'm not sure. Might just be collapsing the insides if I'm doing too much smoothing like that. But that's how I would selectively mask out or only smooth certain parts of the VDP. Smooth, the smooth zone. Talking about growth, there's an amazing thread on AdForce with tons of examples and hip files as well. Check it out. Yeah, there's there's a Git repository that someone's made. I think it's this one. This just has a ton of articles and resources for different, I don't know if they're all growth, but they're all super interesting, like procedural methods for doing like algorithmic operations and I guess it is kind of growth, or like plant-based organic methods to do things. It's really cool to read that if you have some time. But yeah, it's probably going to be it for today. It's got something pretty cool here. I might play around with maybe sliding the carve node parameters to move the goo around, expand the goo. But yeah, this is going to be it for today. Thanks everyone for stopping by, hanging out for another successful Cool Zone. Gonna send everyone over to Blake Catherine, her stream again. She always does really cool still life stuff, things in cinema with Octane. So yeah, hopefully you guys have fun, enjoy what she's up to over there. See you guys tomorrow.